Appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. I was saying how my fellow Texans, it is a little cold out, but also my fellow Chicagoans, because that's where I'm from, it is probably a little cold out there as well. I am very happy that you are joining me this evening, or whatever time it is in the world. Really excited to talk about executive presence. We'll be using the chat box a little bit later. I'll let everyone unmute or put their video on when we get to the Q&A portion. But we're here to talk about executive presence. And executive presence is important, especially if you are a leader or even going to be a leader. Honestly, it's important for whatever position you're in because you don't have to be a leader to have executive presence. I'd love to hear why you think it's important. So throw in the chat, what is important about executive presence to you? Why are you here today? What are you hoping to learn? What are you hoping to gain? Let's say tomorrow you wake up with all the executive presence that you want in the world. What happens? Why is that important to you? Now, for me personally, executive presence creates trust in others. It instills confidence in ourselves, and it sets us up for success in our career. People talk about us when we're not in the room, and all the decisions that are made about us are made when we're not in the room. And so if you have a certain level of executive presence, you haven't defined it yet, but just what you think it is, then you set yourself up for much more success. When people are wondering, who do we keep? Who do we let go? Well, if you have high levels of executive presence, you're probably falling into the who do we keep bucket. Not all the time, but it does give you a differentiating advantage. Especially, executive presence helps you build relationships and sustain them. And with that extra trust, with that confidence, you can do a lot. So thanks for sharing, Anne Marie. We have people see me as a leader and take me seriously in my area of expertise. Look, we're here to also learn from each other. So I would love to see all of you engaging in that chat box. So what does executive presence mean to you and why is it important? You should have an answer to this question. That's why you're here. So today we're going to talk about executive presence. We're going to go over some roadblocks that get in the way of creating it, of activating it, of growing it within us, because we're all capable of developing executive presence. And then we're going to go over the 4 keys to developing executive presence. So there are 4 main pillars that you can focus on in your development of it. And because we don't have a ton of time, we're going to go over the most probably important aspect of presence. And throughout this whole workshop today, I'm going to be giving you a lot of homework. So please have a pencil and pen ready. If you registered, you'll also get a follow-up email with a PDF of these slides, so you'll be able to have all the homework assignments. But learning doesn't happen just from listening, it happens from doing. And so hopefully you can commit to doing some of the activities so that you can actually grow within this area of your professional career and personal self. So if you stick around to the end, we're also going to have a raffling off coaching session, as well as a new online course that I created for how to be the leader of your own career and create a career that you love. And then there's a gift for everyone as well. So stay to the end, or at least check out these slides at the when you get the follow-up email. You wouldn't be able to enter the raffle without being here, but you'll get the gift. So then save those questions too. You can throw them in the chat box now, but probably a little bit easier if you save them to the end. I'm going to make sure that we have time to answer your personal questions, because it's great that I'm up here talking, but it's probably more meaningful to you if I can answer something that's been on your mind. So throughout today, we're not just going to have homework, but we're going to be engaging with each other through a tool called Slido. So if you've been to one of my events before, you have used Slido. And if you have not been to one of my events before, you might have used Slido. It's a pretty prominent tool out there in the virtual world. So to access it, you can use your phone to scan that QR code, or you can go to slido.com and enter the keyword executive LFY. So we have a few different Slido questions today. I have an easy one just to start us off to get everyone online and activated. And so keep that up on your browser window or your phone once you get in. So the first question that we have on Slido, just to make sure that we're all on board, is what's one of your favorite resources on leadership or executive presence? What's one of your favorite resources? Now, you may say my podcast, The Executive, but I actually personally like the book, The Coaching Habit, as well as the podcast, Coaching for Leaders. I have a couple favorites, and I'm really curious what your favorites are. Got some TED Talks. Yeah, there's some pretty good TED Talks out there. Let's see, looking at my bookshelf, if there's something that I really like. Let's see. Nine Lies About Work is wonderful if you're interested in talent development. We have just the book Leadership is wonderful. Unlocking Leadership Mind Traps is also a really good book. See the Way of the Shepherd, more TED Talks. Okay, we're going to be using Slido today. So if you have any issues accessing it, spend this time getting in because we have a little bit more on the intro portion today. Okay, thank you all. Let's see if we can get one more in. They got 3 participants typing. I'll wait a second and see what we get here. Some of my other favorite podcasts are Coaching. I said Coaching for Leaders already. Coaching Real Leaders, which is an HBR podcast. Oh, look at that, Harvard Business Review. And I'm going to pull up my podcast list. I'm a big podcaster. Let's see. Latest episodes. Gartner, courses at Case Western Reserve. You get a lot of free courses online too through EDX. Let's see. The Modern Manager is a really good podcast. Manager Tools, really good as well. And if you're looking for some book recommendations, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to share some of my favorites with you. Okay, let's continue. Thanks all for jumping on Slido. If you haven't been to one of my workshops before, you probably don't know who I am. Maybe you've browsed my LinkedIn profile or my website. But my name is Dr. Benjamin Ritter. I'm the founder of Live for Yourself Consulting. I work with leaders to help them become the leaders of their own career. So that could be anything from creating job and career fulfillment in your current job or what comes afterwards. So that's career clarity, even everything from your resume, your LinkedIn profile, your cover letter, interview tips, how to access the hidden job market, networking on LinkedIn. But also, because I work with mainly leaders and I have a doctorate in organizational leadership, I work on leadership development, professional branding, and executive presence that we're here for today. So you're in good hands. Basically, that's all what I'm telling you today. Worked across the industry. It's a bunch of logos from some of the companies that I've worked with, some big, some small, some startup, some tech, some non, etc. So basically, I've worked across the world within the realms of leadership and career coaching. So what I share with you today is not something that I made up. It's not something that's only applicable to a specific industry. It is foundational. It is what anyone can use to develop executive presence and to ensure that their professional brand leads them towards greater success. If you like what you hear today, check out some of my podcasts, the Live for Yourself Revolution, where we basically talk to people that are living for themselves with some pretty big names as well as some no names, because everyone has a good story if you're willing to listen and ask the right questions. I also am the host of the Executive Podcast, so where I talk to executives on their career paths, how they got to where they are today. And there's some really interesting perspectives on leadership, but also just career stories. I mean, if you're wondering what path you need to take becoming an executive, well, there's no one set path. So make sure you check those out, as well as I mentioned, we'll be raffling off a free course today. So how to be a leader of your own career and create a career you love. This is a course that launched this year. If you're interested, you can scan that QR code, but I'm moving pretty quick. So I'll just, when you get the slides later, you can check it out. But let's get to the real good stuff, the content today about executive presence. But what I'm going to need from all of you is your attention. I'm going to need you to put distractions away. We are not very good multitaskers, no matter what you think. Anything you do while you're multitasking takes a little bit longer. And I really want you to pay attention, make sure you capture the homework exercises, make sure you really reflect on and think about some of the main things that we're discussing today around executive presence. And if you all start engaging with each other, you'll learn even more. So I'm asking all of you, can you commit to giving your full attention and engaging in the workshop today? If you can't access Slido, throw it in the chat. Yes or no? And maybe I'm going to try. I'm a little distracted. I'm tired from today. I totally understand that. Maybe you have a dog like I sometimes have that runs up to your feet with a rubber chicken or a toy and is trying to distract you. But this is your time. You are dedicating an hour of your time to learn about executive presence and to grow in your career. Not that many people right? A small percentage of individuals are willing to take that action and to do that. So you've taken a step forwards. How much are you willing to invest in this step, in the time that you are dedicating for your own growth? I appreciate the honest ones in terms of I'm going to try. And I love the yeses. 100% yes. Happy that you're here. It also looks like we all got the hang of Slido. So perfect, because we're going to be using that. So executive presence is important. We know that it is, except it's not very easy to spot. So 51% of HR practitioners, well, I mean, it's easy to spot, but difficult to define. And if you can't define something, then how do you really know how to spot it? Even though the majority of people say they recognize it when they see it. So the problem with this is that usually when someone gives you feedback, like a leader or a peer, and says, hey, you need to communicate more like a leader, or you need to have more executive presence. This is actually a piece of feedback that I've received in my career, and clients that I work with as well receive. It doesn't give you any direction. You're sitting there just kind of shrugging your shoulders saying, okay, I need to act like more of an executive. What does that mean? Do I need to wear a tie on my Zoom calls? Does it mean that I need to present in a different way? Does it need that, what does it mean? So let's just start off with defining executive presence and what you think it is. So throw in the chat, throw in Slido, what are some signs of executive presence? How do you know that someone has executive presence? And get specific for me. Confidence, okay? What are some signs of confidence? How do you know that someone is confident? It's the ability to think on your feet. Okay, so quick, maybe credible, make you trust them, subject matter expert, clarity of speech, emotionally steady. Okay, so does that mean like they're calm and patient, not as reactive? Lasting impact, being present, okay, focused, can clearly articulate answers. They're a listener. Conviction, they're decisive, being able to be cool under pressure. These are wonderful. These are very specific as well. Calm, they're visionary, like that. Visionary in action is also a little fluffy. We have to define that and say, well, what does being a visionary mean? How do you know someone's a visionary? They're credible, you can trust them. They're passionate, they have a little bit of gravitas, right? A little bit of energy. I love all of these. This is a great start. Thank you very much. Let's see. Anna, someone who is strategic and sees the big picture. They have a different level of altitude or scope. I think we've had some people on this call that have studied executive presence. That's pretty awesome. Okay. Give everyone a pat on the back. These are wonderful. I really, really like this list. So in my mind, and from what I've experienced, executive presence is when someone uses their professional or personal characteristics and skills. So it's a talent, it's a muscle, it's something that you can learn and then use on a daily basis. They use those characteristics and skills to be strategically perceived as an executive leader. And a lot of things that you shared in the previous slide relate to how people perceive executive leaders. So executive presence is just that other people feel like you're a leader. Now, at times, I'm working with clients, one of the initial kind of discomforts come from, well, I can't act that way because that's not authentic. That's not really who I am. Well, executive presence isn't who you are. It's not your values and your core attitudes and beliefs. That can be something that is integrated in executive presence. Executive presence is the perception of other people of you as a leader, having all of those traits that you listed on the previous slide, or whatever is specific to the organization that you work in. So it's a skill, which is awesome because it means that we can develop it. So how do you want to be perceived? And really what this question should really say is, how do people in your organization perceive executives? So the first bit of homework that I have for you is to reflect on and think about. So write this down. What actions represent the traits of executives within your organization? Just make note of this for a moment. This is something for you to do later on in the workshop. or later on after the workshop? And if you have some answers, throw them in the chat now. I'd love to see. So what are some of the traits of executives in your organization? And what are some actions that represent those traits? So for example, if credibility is a trait of executives in your organization, so then subject matter expertise, so for example, if you work in the banking industry, would be understanding of the banking system, industry, and organization, specifically related to your field, as well as maybe trends that are ongoing and how they impact the strategic goals or priorities of your organization. Now, there's going to be a lot of different traits that executives have in your organization and actions that represent those traits. But all I want you to do for your homework is just to pick one that you feel is the most powerful. So when you are watching executives in your organization and something really stands out to you that someone's a leader, what is the thing that they're doing right then and there? Is it a way that they're speaking? Is it what they're wearing? Is it their energy? Is it what they're saying? Make a note of that. Figure out the action that's related to that feeling that you're having that caused that. Research how to create that for yourself, then try it out. Just one small step. First homework assignment. Now, mirroring executive presence in your organization sounds easy, right? That's simple. Okay, I'm just going to align with what my executives are doing. But it's not always easy. There's things that get in the way. So what do you think gets in the way of executive presence? Or what gets in the way of your executive presence? It's another Slido question for everybody. And throughout the presentation, by the way, if you are having certain thoughts or something really resonates with you, throw it in the chat. Now it's going to help other people that are here, as well as it's going to solidify that learning within your mind. So if you hear something, that's one way to learn, but when you write it, it's another way to learn. So you write it in the chat or write it with a pencil or pen, or write it in a Word document on your computer. We're here to learn. So let's see, what gets in the way of executive presence? Doubt. Yep, doubt, confidence. Unconscious bias, fear of making a mistake, access, lack of advanced planning. Let's see what else we got. Yep, confident in talking points, stress, availability, imposter syndrome, a lot of doubt. Interesting. You're not alone. Confidence is one of the main pillars in self-leadership. If we don't have confidence, we won't take action. And by the way, I work with pretty high-powered CEOs, people that you would think are not ever doubting themselves. And every single one of my clients suffers from imposter syndrome. No matter how much money they make, no matter how successful they've been in their career, they doubt their abilities to be a leader. They doubt even that they have their job. So it is very normalized. Caught up in details and deadlines, not able probably to think strategically about some of the things that executive leaders are able to think about. They have some time to be innovative and think critically. They have more information about the strategic vision of the company. Handling a conversation while listening and finding talking points that matter most. Yes, being present and focusing. Saying too much. So we got a lot of doubt, bias. That's very true. We suffer that still at certain organizations. It's too prominent. And being present, being focused. This is wonderful. I'll let a couple more come in, and then we're going to move forward. Bias for young leaders. And there's bias for for gender, nationality, race. Even some organizations just bias for anything that's different than their culture. So we really need to be interviewing companies before we accept a role there. We need to understand if this is the place for us to grow or not. Able to separate personal problems and work issues. Okay. These are great. Thank you, everyone. So the top 4 roadblocks that I've uncovered while working with clients over the past 10 years, really, in career and leadership development, is number 1, you don't know what it is. Hopefully we're solving that right now. You can't work on something if you don't actually know what it is. 2, you know what it is, but you don't know how to develop the skills. So I know what's wrong, I just don't know what to do about it. The third, these are no particular order. This was said a lot in Slido. You don't believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to take action. You're going to miss out on opportunities. And the last, you think your work speaks for itself. So you don't fully understand. This kind of goes with you don't know what it is, how people define executive presence. And it's not by the quality of your work. So out of these four, which one do you think you struggle with the most? Let's take a vote. And then after this, we're going to talk about what we can do about each of those roadblocks. Work speaks for itself. Doubt, you don't believe in yourself. Don't know what it is. Hard to work on something and you don't know what it is, but you know what it is. Well, how do you actually work on it? Let's see. Honestly, two of probably the roadblocks that impact my clients the most and that I've seen over the years is doubt. So imposter syndrome. I don't believe in myself. I don't think I can be a leader. Or being a leader isn't something that I want to do because you think that the lifestyle is a certain way. And then you think your work speaks for itself. Because a lot of times we've achieved professional success in our career because our work has led us to that success. We work hard, we do well, we get promoted. We work hard, we do well, we get promoted. And then we realize that to actually move up into higher level leadership positions, there's more people at the table making that decision. And we need really to have a network that's going to champion us, as well as a certain level of vision and leadership qualities that are more than just our work. So let's see, 44% your work speaks for itself, 31% you don't believe in yourself. Okay, you don't know what it is, and you know what it is, but don't know how to develop the skills. Okay, thank you everyone for your engagement. So let's say you don't know what it is. What can we do about that? So pen and paper, homework time again. I want you to pay attention in meetings. Watch leaders, watch people that you feel express, right? They are the epitome of executive presence. I'd like you to keep a log of their behaviors and traits. Just do it for, say, 3 to 5 meetings. Keep a log. Because then once you know what it is, you can figure out what to do about it. Now, if you don't know how to develop those skills, pick one of the skills, pick one of those traits that you found, and do some research. Type it into a search bar, type it into the search bar in a podcast, in your podcast app, type it in the search bar on Amazon, and you're going to get a ton of books, a ton of podcasts, type it in YouTube, ton of videos that relate to whatever trait that you're trying to find. And even I do this. Someone that has a doctorate, years of research and study and practical application. But if I'm talking about something, or if I'm working with a client on a specific topic, I'm going to my podcast app and I'm typing in imposter syndrome. I'm typing in executive presence. Or if I'm creating a new leadership training, I'm going to Google and I'm typing in top books for new leaders. And I'm reading those as quickly as I can. You never know what you're going to find by doing that research. And also, you're being more intentional by doing that research. So then automatically, whenever you're intentionally surrounding your life with a certain topic, you start expressing that topic, the things, that skill, and the things happen around you that relate to that topic. So it's very interesting when we can dedicate our time to learning certain skills. The information is out there if we're willing to actually invest the time. And by the way, you can always hire a coach, right? So let's say, though, you don't believe in yourself. And when you don't believe in yourself, you don't take action. Or you are so stressed within moments where you can be an executive, you are not able to think critically. You're not able to be innovative. You're so in your own head, you're not able to actually express the signs of being an executive. So the first thing we need to do is actually build an awareness of our negative thoughts. So just like you were keeping a log of behaviors of executives in your meetings or people that were expressing leadership qualities, start keeping a log of your negative thoughts. When you build awareness, you're then able to interrupt those thoughts and feelings. It's just because you think it, just because you believe in it, doesn't mean that it's true. So as we start to build our awareness around our thoughts, we then can change them in the future. But I'm not saying to do that yet. I'm just saying the first step would be to build awareness. That awareness then allows us to change them. The other thing you can do is start a success journal. So reflect back on your career, start building a list of some of the major wins that you've had. Because by the way, if you have a job right now, if you have had a job before, you've done things really well. You've developed certain skills. You've been able to form positive relationships. You just tend to overlook those things and focus on the negative, especially when you don't believe in yourself. So build awareness of your negative thoughts, start a success journal. That's the 2 steps that I'm going to ask you to take. Now, there's more to each of these, but if you can do those things, you're going to see improvement. Okay, so now if you think your work speaks for itself, what I'd like you to do is start setting up meetings with executives at your company. But actually also suggest listening to the executive podcast, because you'll learn that people became an executive in very unique ways. But in these meetings with executives at your company, ask them about how they got to where they are today. None of them are probably going to tell you, I knocked this project out of the ballpark and was promoted. You can even get specific and ask them, what led you to getting promoted? What led you to your executive role? What led you to the role before that? And notice, what were some of the key reasons? Or who promoted you? What was the process to getting promoted? And the reason why we're focusing on promotions into leadership roles and for executive level positions is because for that to happen, that individual more than likely had to be perceived as an executive. So how did they get to where they are today? This also has the added benefit of you building champions throughout your organization that know you're interested in leadership development. And when people know that you're interested in leadership development and you ask them for guidance, they want to help you. They want you to succeed, which is such a powerful thing to develop within an organization. Okay, that was another homework assignment. Hopefully you can take some action there. Because now we're going to get into the 4 keys of executive presence. So we talked about what gets in the way of executive presence and how to surpass that. We talked about some traits that represent executive presence. Hopefully you pick something and take some action. But there are 4 key pillars, and those traits actually fit into these key pillars of executive presence. But I wanted to call those initial steps out first because sometimes we can get overwhelmed with all these pillars. And really, to get a little bit of improvement can actually build momentum to help us get to where we want to be. So even if you just sign off right now, say, okay, I got enough homework to do. It's all I want to do right now. You would make progress. But if you want to stick around for some more information and for those raffles and some gifts at the end, then I got some more info for you. Because the 4 keys of executive presence are vision. And so this means that you have a short and long-term vision that aligns with the short and long-term vision of the organization. And you're able to communicate that vision to your team, to your peers, and to leaders of your organization in a way that matters to them. So you might hear this word altitude a lot spoken about when it comes to executive presence. That means that you're speaking in a way that matters. That's all. Your leader is working on different projects than you are. Your direct reports are working on different projects than you are. They have different goals. So when you speak to them about your vision, you're doing it in a way that matters to them. So you have to have a vision, and then you have to communicate it in a way that matters to the person you're communicating it to. So the second pillar is credibility. We talked about this already. You're a subject matter expert in your organization, in the industry, and in leadership. A lot of people tend to overlook this piece. They go, well, I know everything. I'm an expert. But if you show prowess in giving feedback, in managing one-to-one meetings, in networking, in presenting, speaking in a way that is more direct and concise, which tends to be a sign of an executive leader, then that lends credibility. That builds trust. That is a sign of executive presence. Third pillar, reliability. So that's just you following up and following through. People know they can count on you. Something is said, you say you're going to do it, you go do it. Something is said, you know something about it, you follow up on it. There is no, that's not my job when it comes to executive presence. You stand out when you stand up, right? When you actually raise your hand and take action on things that need to be taken action on. Too often, people just overlook things that happen in an organization because they don't want more work. Now, raising your hand and saying that something's wrong and fixing it, taking action on it, coming up with solutions instead of just problems, usually doesn't create more work. It just takes an extra step. And that in itself is an aspect of executive presence. The fourth one we're actually going to focus on for the rest of today is presence. And this is, are you engaged? Are you charismatic? And are you relatable? So being relatable, listening, asking the right questions, having someone feel like you understand them, that is a part of presence. That is the part of being a leader. So overall, presence is a lot of things, but it's how you look, move, sound, how you communicate, how you listen, how you connect with others, how you relate to them, form relationships, and how you engage. This is probably the most important pillar for people that are creating executive presence. And so there's a lot of different aspects of this in virtual and in person, but for the time that we have, we're going to focus on the most important part of presence. And so let's see if we can figure out what that is. So when do you engage with people the most in your organization? When are you most present? Jump in on Slido again, or you can jump in the chat. Let's see, we have one-on-one, when you're rounding, meetings, bringing me back to my healthcare days, going on rounds. Meetings or events, meetings. Okay, I think we got it. And just because of time, I'm going to move forwards. Yep, meetings. Your meeting presence. This is probably the most important aspect of presence that people tend to overlook. And so I'm going to be including this slide again in the follow-up. It's kind of a checklist that you can use to help you be present in meetings. So this is your next homework assignment. Honestly, if there's one thing that you choose to do out of everything that you learned today, I hope it's this. So before going into a meeting, what's your mindset? If you're feeling stressed, you're feeling rushed, how often when you are on a deadline, someone comes up to you and tries to have a conversation, do you cut them off? We cannot have that mindset in a meeting. So we need to be positive. We need to be relaxed. So try to do some jumping jacks if you need to, or quick breathing exercise before a meeting, but you need to be focused and present and understand the purpose of that meeting and not bringing problems, which we tend to do when we are stressed, but instead solution-oriented. If you notice when you're paying attention to executives in meetings, they are solution-oriented. They are solving problems. They are tying things together. They are keeping people on point. Not all leaders, right? People that have executive presence. So how are you preparing to have this mindset in a meeting? I'd even say you probably could listen to some stand-up right before you go in if you're feeling a little stressed out. Or you can sit back and say, okay, who's attending this meeting? What's the purpose? What's the outcomes that we have to derive? What information do I have that can help us reach that outcome? And how can I, instead of saying no to people, say yes and? So then you can also prepare by sitting down and saying, what outcome could we achieve in this meeting that would move us forward in our priorities and our goals? So this is that overall purpose. And while you're doing this prep, and especially if you're leading the meeting, what's the first thing that you want to say? What tends to happen is that individuals don't really think about how they want to start a meeting. What's the first thing they want to say in a meeting? And that does not lend itself to seeming like a leader. Leaders are organized, they're direct, they're concise, they take charge. So what's the first thing that you want to say? And what are some questions that you want to ask that are going to help you keep the purpose of the meeting highlighted? and help you come to solutions, help everyone come to solutions. And can you sit back and say, what are the questions that I'm going to be asked? Can I prepare that information ahead of time? If you really want to seem like an executive, sit back and prepare information that you know is going to be asked during the meeting. Too often people just go into a meeting kind of running in, rushing in, flying by the seat of their pants. They have the information, but it takes them a second to pull it up. Be credible, be the expert. Know your stuff. Put a little extra effort in being focused and knowledgeable. It can go a very long way. Now, when it comes to engagement, people sometimes sit back, have their video off, doing other work, because a meeting is just time where you can do other work, right? Check some emails. But if you'll pay attention to the leaders in the meeting, the executive team, a lot of times they are really focused. Camera on, eyes at attention, watching everyone in the meeting, tying things together. They are present. I'd say one of the number one differences you can see in people that are not executives in a meeting is if they are engaged and focused. So challenge yourself to ask at least one question and to make one statement per meeting. And to also give others your attention to feel heard and understood. So ask them questions after they say something and summarize takeaways from what they've said or what everyone is saying in a conversation. And the only way that you can do that is if you're paying attention. At the end of the meeting, give some positive recognition. It's part of being engaged. Also, after the meeting itself, send someone an email, ping them some positive feedback, take action and let everyone know that you took that action, communicate, often that is left out, and make sure everyone that needs to know the information from that meeting knows that information. So connect the dots. If you do this, it's a lot, but if you do this, people will start talking about you. People will recognize that you are an executive and they'll see that you have executive presence. Now, in addition to this, because what this is really doing is getting you in the spotlight, start setting up some meetings with leaders within your department and throughout your organization, all seniorities. The reason why you want to do this is because you're building a greater level of understanding of your organization, of the projects that are ongoing in the organization itself, what struggles people are having, and that's going to allow you to engage more in those meetings, connect the dots, relate and build relationships. And with those relationships, you'll then be the person people are talking about in those closed rooms and be more likely to get promoted, to be given higher level projects, and honestly just be considered a leader. People are going to be wowed if you have not been doing some of these things, and then all of a sudden this switch is flicked. People are going to start paying so much more attention to you. Overall, you want to engage with individuals in your organization. You want to relate to them, so give them the chance to talk, so listen to them, ask questions, support their goals and priorities, even just by listening or connecting the dots, because you're going to be connecting with others. And as you build this network, you're also going to become an organizational expert. And again, this is the most important aspect of executive presence. So in summary, executive presence is about how others feel about you and how executives act within your organization, and if you're mirroring those traits. Focus on those 4 key areas and those roadblocks. Pick one thing, do that homework, and most importantly, if you just do one thing, focus on that meeting presence. People will notice. It also has the highest ROI because more people are noticing. Let that sink in. We're going to have a second for questions. Start preparing them. Before we get into the Q&A, we're going to have our raffle. This is our giveaway for a free leadership and career coaching session valued at $500 and a free online course for crafting a career that you can love and being a leader of your career. Value of $180. So all you have to do to enter this raffle is to submit your name and email. This does not show up on the screen, but I don't want to just randomly pick people that aren't interested in either of these. So submit your name and email, and after today, I will be selecting 2 lucky winners. So give everyone about 30 seconds to enter their name and email into Slido, and I use that 30 seconds to please craft some questions, and we'll be moving on to the Q&A portion for the rest of our time today. And I'll give everyone a chance to unmute and turn on their cameras if they want as well. You can use a chat box to put your email in, but I also, just from your privacy's sake, I would prefer you to use Slido. But entering in the chat box, I'll also add that to the random generator for selecting our winners. Okay, so another 15 seconds, and we'll move forwards. I see people typing, so out of respect, I will wait until I stop seeing people typing. In the meantime, please start putting your questions together. You can even actually start throwing them in the chat if you'd like as well. And let's see, I can turn on the ability to unmute yourself and also start your video if you'd like. Nice to see some faces. Okay, looks like everyone is done in the polling. I'm going to move on to the Q&A, but just so everyone knows, you can also receive 10% off coaching programs. So for the next 48 hours, everyone that attended today, appreciate your time, can get 10% off. So if you'd like to receive that discount and interested in a coaching program or learning more about them, connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me the words executive presence, and we can set up a introductory call. So if you reach out to me within 48 hours, you get that discount. So even if we talk in a couple days due to scheduling. Okay, Q&A time. I'm going to stop sharing. And let's see what we got. So is executive presence something executives want, or is it presented to them from HR and coaches? So executive presence just means that people perceive you as a leader. And so that just means that people then will follow you. So I think we have HR and coaches that are learning what executive presence is or know what it is, and then are able then to help leaders develop that so they can succeed in an organization. I do think, though, as I mentioned in the beginning of the workshop, that it is said way too freely. Someone says, we need you to develop executive presence, but that is not very instructive. So what you need to do if you get that information, other than to follow some of the tips in this workshop, is to then go back to your leader, go back to HR, your people team, and ask them, what is it that you mean? What is executive presence? What does it mean to be a leader in this organization? Or what do you feel that I lack that I can start working on? Be my mentor, be my guide. Okay, number 2, how to deal with leaders who are resistant to change, want to stay reactive and blaming. One of the best ways that you can deal with leaders that are resistant is to understand why they're resistant. Very often, someone that is resistant to change is not listened to. They were ignored. People roll their eyes to them. They just go, oh, this is Jill. Jill is resistant to change. Jill has just been here for 10 years. Jill doesn't want anything different. This is just who this person is. And sorry if anyone's named Jill here, just picking a random name. Check out the coaching habit. Check out a system for coaching. So what's going on? What's really the problem here? And you can, which are basically a list of, it's like 7 questions that you can use to help someone come to what the real problem is for them and to help them find a solution for it. So when someone's resistant, it's because there's something that they're resisting to. It usually isn't the change, it's the belief about that they have for the change, or a fear that they have related to the change. And we need to give that person the time to really listen to them and help them work through that problem. Let's see. And by the way, you can unmute or put your camera on if you'd like. I see we have let's see what we got. Another question. How do you manage unconscious bias when the team is all white males and you are female? There are masculine traits that they seem to reward. Yes. So actually my dissertation, my research for my doctorate highlighted that the values for women and men within an organization are different, and women tend to actually put greater emphasis on achievement and success because they're held, sadly, usually, right, to higher levels, to different standards than men are within organizations. So how do you deal with that bias? Well, if you're in an organization that has those traditional values, then it's difficult to surpass them. So I'd say, can you do some research prior to getting into an organization through your questions of HR, the people team, of leaders, of women, especially female leaders within an organization, or anyone that potentially could be excluded, and doing your due diligence there to understand what the culture is. Now, if you're already in an organization where that is a part of the game that they're playing, then I'd say get very specific feedback, get very specific metrics that you need to hit and to meet, and then to show your progress towards those metrics, and consistently on a weekly basis get feedback on how you're progressing. I'd say you deserve better to get out and to find somewhere new. But if you have to play the game, figure out their rules so that you can play it. Don't want to bore everyone about the dissertation, but Angel, if you message me, then I can send you the link so you can read it. I'm happy to share it. There's a lot of time within my life. Okay, we got a couple more minutes. I'm happy to stick around for some other questions. Hopefully this content added some value. If you're on my email list, you'll get the recording of this workshop, as well as if you entered the raffle, I'll be reaching out to those that won as well. But I really appreciate that everyone is here today, and that you're here to learn about executive presence and cared enough about your career to spend an hour of your time. And I'm sure you're spending hours of your time learning in other places as well. Just give another 10 seconds and see if any other questions come in. Book recommendations on executive presence. Yeah, there's one I'd recommend called Own the Room. So I'd check that one out. And honestly, executive presence is kind of a niche. There's a book I think called Executive Presence, which is fine. But it's such a niche topic that you could probably find better podcasts on it. And then just in general, books about leadership. And so I'm looking to see, because I have some recommendations on leadership books. Let's see what we have here. So Everyone Deserves a Great Manager by Scott Jeffrey Miller is really good. The New 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard was really good. The 4 Obsessions of an Extraordinary Executive by Patrick Lencioni as well. So I could probably keep going. So I'm going to stop on those because I think we can get overwhelmed with the number of resources that we have around a specific topic. But start there, and hopefully, and I know for a fact actually, if you start there, you'll grow as a leader. Yeah, Kimberly, I'll put those books in the follow-up email, so watch your inbox. If you'd like to get in touch with me, connect with me on LinkedIn, Dr. Benjamin Ritter, or you can go to liveforyourselfconsulting.com and schedule a time for us to talk. But I'm really active on LinkedIn. If you want any of the recommendations, just ping me, send me a message. And most importantly, everyone, as you know the name of my company, keep on living for yourself.